A thematic commentary on the Qur'an by Sheikh Muhammad al-Ghazali, translated from the Arabic by Ashur A. Shamish and revised by Zainab Alawi. May Allah bless them all. Surah 3, Al-Imran, House of Imran. It is easy to identify immediately the subject matter of this surah. It revolves around two major issues: the debate with the people of the book, the Jews and the Christians, of whom the Jews were Medina natives incited to oppose Islam, and a review and assessment of the humiliating and tragic defeat suffered by the Muslims at the Battle of Uhud in 625 after Christ. The two issues are treated separately to begin with, but halfway through the surah they are brought together, and from then on are discussed as almost one subject. The outcome of the whole discussion seems to focus on the fact that perseverance and steadfastness are required to face both issues: the scheming of the Jewish establishment inside Medina and the attacks by the infidels from outside it. Islam is a religion addressed to all human societies without coercion or discrimination. Whoever responds positively is taken into the fold, while those who turn away are left in peace. However, as mentioned earlier, those who commit aggressions against Islam and the Muslims are boldly confronted. This is clear from the verse. If they argue with you, say, I have surrendered myself to God, and so have those who followed me. As for those who had received the scriptures and the illiterates, that is, the pagan Arabs with no revealed scriptures, ask them, have you surrendered yourself to God? If they have, they shall be rightly guided. But if they turn away, then your only duty is to deliver the message to them. God is watching His servant. Ayat 20. The surah begins by stressing that Islam is a universal guidance and that the Quran a confirmation of all previous revelation. God's revelation is one, in the sense that it sets the truth apart from falsehood in a sharp and unequivocal manner. The surah highlights the fact that Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad have trodden the same path, and that the scope of Islam encompasses all other revealed religions, regardless of their time and place. The Torah and the Gospel are both referred to here as God's revelations or messages. These phrases occurs 10 times in the surah, as in verse 4, which says, those who deny God's revelation, grievous sufferings awaits them, for God is mighty and capable of retribution. And verse 199, towards the end of the surah, there are among the people of the book, the Jews and the Christians, those who believe in God and what has been revealed to you and to them. They humble themselves before God and do not exchange God's revelation for a trifling price. There could be no contradiction nor differences in the basic tenets and principles of divine faith, nor in what was revealed to Muhammad and his earlier brothers in the line of prophets, Moses and Jesus. Contradiction can exist only between God's revelation and the false notions and philosophies that people put forward. Belief, as presented in the Quran, applies to what has been revealed to the Muslim and to those before them. Those who deviate from it ought to repent and return to the straight path. The people of the book is a term that refers to Jews and Christians. Unlike the debate with the Jews, That with the Christian in Medina was calm and unhurried. The Jews had their own settlements inside Medina itself and in other parts of northern Hijaz. Their elders resisted Islam, gainsaid God's revelation, and berated his messenger. Moreover, they collaborated with the pagan Arabs in their assiduous efforts and fights against Islam and the Muslim. They were encouraged by their wealth and economic power and the strong foothold they had secured in Medina. It was repeatedly condemned in the surah in the following ayats: ayat number 10, ayat number 21, ayat 116, ayat 196, and ayat 197. For excessive wealth and affluence would lead individuals as well as nations to ignore God and overreach themselves in pursuit of power and influence. Although the Jewish settlements in Hijaz were much more developed and economically prosperous than other cities and towns in Arabia, they had never used any of their wealth or expertise for the development and welfare of the region as a whole. With its well-established tradition of self-dignity, honesty, and hospitality, the pagan Arab society could in fact be said to have been more liberal and charitable than other communities in their midst. When Prophet Muhammad began to spread his teaching, he proved to be more persuasive and enduring, and less condescending than the Jewish spokesmen who have been exposed as arrogant and self-centered. Their attitudes and conduct that in the end leads to their defeat and the end of their influence and existence in the area. The Jews had enjoyed the honor and privilege of custodianship of God's revelation for several successive generations. They had been entrusted with it for as long as they had come to nurture the false belief that God's revelation belonged to them and to them alone. The nation that would have the eternal, indisputable right to hold and interpret God's revelation and reap their benefit forever. They were hopelessly mistaken. Honor, privilege, status, and leadership in the world have to be earned through devotion and hard work. By the time Prophet Muhammad had emerged, the Jews' capacity to carry God's revelation forward had reached its nadir. The rabbis' hearts had turned hard, morals had deteriorated, and selfishness had gained the upper hand. Greed for material and worldly possession and privileges had become their sole preoccupation. Worse than that, they had also displayed signs of insolence and insubordination towards and rejection of God and the mission with which He had entrusted their race. And so it was necessary to transfer the responsibility and the trust to another human group, which was better qualified and which would give it the effort and devotion it deserved. The surah expresses this in the following verse. Say, Lord, sovereign of all creation, you bestow sovereignty on whom you will and take away from whom you will. You raise whomever you will and abase whomever you will. All goodness lies in your hands. You have power over all things. Ayat 26. This fundamental assertion is preceded by elaborate reasons and consideration, such as, have you not taken note of those who receive portions of the book? When they are called upon to accept the judgment of God's book, some of them turn away and take no heed. It is because they said, we shall suffer the fire for a few days only. Ayat 23 to Ayat 24. They were so overcome by that false sense of security that they turned to open rebellion, squandering the divine injunctions and reneging on their commitment to them. God's response to that was to confirm divine justice towards all people and to dispel the erroneous idea that God was biased towards any particular ethnic or racial group, saying, "What will they do when we gather them all together upon a day that is sure to come, when every soul will be given what it earned with no injustice whatsoever?" Ayat 25. In God's eyes, people are all equal. Each shall reap his or her just reward according to their behavior and conduct. When humankind is brought before God for judgment, each human being shall face the Creator alone. The one thing that will redeem any of them shall be their piety and the depth and sincerity of their belief in God. It is important to keep in mind that although those words are addressed to Jews in Arabia, they also serve as a subtle reminders to other human groups. God was not going to chastise the Jews for their deviation and overlook the misdemeanor of the Arabs if they were to follow their example. Similar actions and activities would earn similar reactions and responses. The pitfall in which errant Jews were caught was their misconception that the Torah had been graced by them rather than the other way round, and this had led to their fateful fall from God's grace and favor. Today, there are Arabs who refuse to be associated with Islam and try to separate it from Arab culture and history. Their faith could not be any different from that of the misguided Jews of Medina before them. God does not make any undue or unmerited preferences among humans. The debate with the people of the book is covered over a large part of the surah, and apart from a fleeting allusion in verse 6 to the birth of Jesus, was merely directed at the Jews of Arabia, whose animosity towards the early Muslim was much more pronounced, in saying, "It is He who created you, as He places inside the mother's womb. There is no God but Him, the mighty and the wise." The surah outlines God's stupendous power to create human beings and shape their forms, soul and body, and in the same breath alludes to the fact that Jesus' miraculous birth was but one of a multitude of feats and incredible acts of God. He had shown humankind veritable signs of superiority and ingenuity in His creation, endowing some people with higher qualities and aptitude than others. Jesus' fatherless conception and birth were but two of this extraordinary and exceptional act. This is a subject which we shall come to discuss later. Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim.